Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Acting Prime Minister. This week we're sending someone inside that door of number 10 who spent a significant amount of her time banging on it. Not a politician, but someone who's devoted their life to lobbying them. Hannah Deacon was thrown into politics, not by choice, but by necessity, campaigning for her son Alfie to get life-changing drugs. His epilepsy meant he had fits up to 150 times a week until the family moved to Holland to try medicinal cannabis. The results were transformative, but the family had to return to the UK where the drugs weren't legal, until, that is, a change in the law last summer. But as Hannah explained to me in this often emotional interview, for many, getting the treatment is still proving virtually impossible. So no surprise that Hannah's personal struggle to find her premiership as this week's Acting Prime Minister. Hannah Deacon, welcome to Acting Prime Minister.
Hi.
You've met the Prime Minister, you've lobbied the Prime Minister, now you get to be the Prime Minister.
Wonderful.
For the next half an hour, you are in charge of the country.
Okay.
So I'm going to take you through that door at number 10. You walk in, you close it behind you. What is the first thing you think that you would do?
Bring my children and my partner into the house and make it a home. Have my photographs out. Yeah, I think that's really important. I'd have to feel like it was home. Having been in there, it's big, it's drafty and airy and old, and I think, you know, I'd have to put my stamp on it, definitely.
Does it feel like a family home because you've been in there?
No, not the I only went up the stairs and into an office, so not where I went. So no, I definitely would make things more homely and make sure my children were there and my partner, and we would make it a home, definitely, and have pictures of us and all the, which I have in my own home, pictures of things that we've done together that are very special to me. So yeah.
Who do you think you'd call first?
Probably my mum. Yeah, my mum is a big part of my life. She's always been in my life, and she's my mother, but my best friend as well. And yeah, definitely.
Has she been a big support to you as you've been going through raising a child with epilepsy?
Yeah, hugely. She was there when my second child was born with me, so was Drew, for both children being born. And yeah, she's been a huge part of my life, and she has never once questioned what I wanted to do to help my child, which I'm forever grateful to her for that, because, you know, I think some people did question what I wanted to do. But my partner Drew and my mum they've always had my back completely and believed in everything that I've wanted to do. So yeah, she would also be there with me.
Talking of Alfie, just explain to us again, what is the situation that he's in with his epilepsy and why it's so important that he gets the right medication?
Well, Alfie has a condition called PCDH19, which is a genetic mutation. There's actually only 9 boys in the world with his mutation and about 500 girls. It's a very rare, aggressive epilepsy, which comes with learning delays and other issues. He had very severe uncontrolled seizures until he was 6, until we tried medical cannabis. The only medication that helped Alfie to not have seizures was intravenous methylprednisolone, which is a steroid, extremely dangerous to give to people at all, but 25 doses a month is what he was having before we went to Holland. It's very, very dangerous. So Alfie, we went to Holland with him, gave him medical cannabis under a paediatric neurologist's direction, and after a big campaign, we then received the first permanent medical cannabis licence for him on the 19th of June, and when the law changed, he now has an NHS prescription, which, as far as I know, is the only NHS prescription in the country.
So you've campaigned long and hard for this, and as you say, you got a change in the law last year.
I've seen a change in him.
Yeah, on those drugs. And what difference did it make to the amount of fits that he was having? And he
has a clustering epilepsy, so he didn't have seizures every day, but when he did have seizures, it was always at night, very severe, very aggressive. Had to get him to hospital in an ambulance. We were doing that every week, every 4 to 7 days he was in an ambulance to hospital. He didn't develop for years. He was very slow in developing because he was so ill. He couldn't go to school. Since having 5 months in Holland and since being home and him being on his regular treatment of medical cannabis, he is now at school every day. He's learning to ride a bike. He's learned to ride a bike. He's learned to ride a horse independently. He's learning to swim independently. His world has opened up and his brain is starting to heal. And medical cannabis is not a cure. I will always say that it's not a cure. You know, he has had 3 seizures in a year, but he was having 400 seizures a month. So,
Wow.
you know, his life is immeasurably better, and that means that mine and my partner's life and my daughter's life is better. And that's why I'm so passionate about medical cannabis, because I feel it should be available to everyone in this country who needs it, not just a very few people at the moment.
I was going to ask you how it impacted on your life, because if you've got a child who's having that many fits, surely you can't really do anything. You can't do any day-to-day stuff. You can't plan to go to the supermarket. You can't nip out to the shops, because a fit could happen at any moment.
Well, he always started clustering at night, so that was, but actually that caused me a lot of trauma, because we'd be fast asleep and we'd hear a screaming tonic-clonic seizure and we knew we'd had to get him to hospital. It's caused me and my partner a huge amount of anxiety, which we are dealing with and we're getting over, but it's very, very hard. My partner used to say that we were just existing, and it was true. I mean, it put a huge amount of pressure on our relationship. We were just existing. I couldn't leave the home. I was a full-time carer. Alfie would... He was either in hospital having seizures, or we were at home, him coming off heavy-duty steroids and other drugs. He would attack me, he would scratch me, he would punch me, he would hit me, he would attack his sister. It was absolutely horrendous, and that is why I did what I did. That's why we went to Holland as a family, because we had to do something. We were desperate. He was so ill, and it was awful. And now we can do things. We can go out for a drink. We can see friends. I can work. You know, it's changed our lives. Absolutely changed our lives beyond measure. And
you've changed the law partly through your campaigning, along with some other parents too. It's a very specific change in the law, though, and not a lot of parents are able to get hold of these drugs now.
No.
So, as Prime Minister, coming back to that, what's the first bill that you would pass to try and improve the situation?
Well, the law has changed. You know, we all know the Home Secretary looked at it and did the right thing and changed the law on the 1st of November. But unfortunately, from that point, it has been a catastrophic failure. The NHS and other bodies who are providing guidance on medical cannabis, I'm afraid, as far as I'm concerned, really don't understand medical cannabis and are citing references to research that's irrelevant to medical use in cannabis, and actually it's fear-mongering. And what I'd like to see is, if there's a problem, how do we fix it? Because at the moment we're being told, well, there's no RCTs, random controlled trials in medical cannabis, there's not enough evidence, we're not going to prescribe it. Well, let's go back. If there's an issue with trials, if there's an issue with data, how do we make that better? How do we enable families like mine to access medical cannabis? So what I'd like to do is put together a task force of professionals, doctors, other ministers who are interested in trying to help this to be better. Let's look at how we pool evidence. There is lots and lots of evidence throughout the world that medical cannabis is safe and effective for lots of different things. Instead of saying the UK hasn't got it, let's go and find it. Let's go and find this evidence. Let's talk to professionals in Canada and Holland and places like that where medical cannabis is available. So that's the first thing I would do as Prime Minister, is to ensure that the law is enacted. And at the moment, the law is not being enacted, and many people are suffering because of that.
The government aren't providing statistics at the moment on how many parents have actually managed to get hold of this drug. Do you have any idea what those numbers are like, or how many parents are waiting? Yeah,
well, there's many parents waiting. I actually, in my work, I support about 18 families. None of them have prescriptions for full extract cannabis oil. All of them are being told various reasons why not. Most of them are because there's not enough trial data, or there isn't enough money, or what have you. We know that Alfie has an NHS prescription. I know that there's 2 licences that were issued in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure if they're still licences or prescriptions, because it's a devolved health, and I don't know. We know that there is one private child, a child that has a private prescription for medical cannabis, and I think my understanding is that it's 2 adults for pain. So that's 6 people in the UK who are accessing medical cannabis. And actually, what really is concerning is that 3 of them are private. Actually, 4 of them, I think, are now private. That's really wrong, because are we now saying that if you have enough money, you can get medical cannabis, but if you don't, then you can't? You know, why? My question as well would be, is why did my son and 2 other families get medical cannabis if it's not safe? It's either safe or it isn't. And if it's not safe, then they shouldn't have given us a licence for it. So there is a real issue at the moment with that, and it's really very worrying that there is not more prescriptions being done, because it could really save a lot of people. So that would be my absolute most important thing that I would do is make that better for people, because I know what it's like to be a mother of a very sick child, and it's horrible. And I'm not saying it would work for everyone, but everyone should have the right to try.
You've got that perspective of politics from the outside looking in, and someone who's ended up sort of in this political sphere partly out of accident.
Yeah.
What do you make of the way politics works in this country? And as Prime Minister, how would you sort of try and change the way that it works?
I remember going to Westminster the first time, and I have met some amazing MPs. I would absolutely say that, some amazing people that really have tried to fight for what I was trying to do for my child. But I do think it's a bubble. I think that I find it difficult. I know that MPs go to their constituents and their surgeries and they see people, but I really still struggle to understand how people who are making decisions in London really understand what it's like to live in a tower block in Manchester. You know, they don't, and I think that's a real worry. I think it's really important that people do understand what poor people have to live like, and what they have to go through. You know, food banks, for example, are being used a lot and things like that. And I think sometimes it's really difficult for MPs to maybe understand that. And then you're making decisions for people when you may not understand necessarily what it's like to be like that. So, did you think,
because you had high-level contact with the Prime Minister?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you find the Prime Minister? Did you feel as if she was someone who understood your needs?
I felt that she was very sincere when I met her, and she said to me, you know, as I've talked about before, she said, you know, we will allow you to apply for a licence under a compassionate and speedy process. And I did believe her. And, you know, we spent 4 months working with the Home Office under Nick Hurd's, guidance. Nick Hurd was in charge of what we were trying to do. I really like Nick. I think he's a lovely man. We agreed not to seek media attention while we did that work, because I absolutely fundamentally respect the rule of law and I respect those people working in that position. But I also feel that they are detached from normal life, actually, a lot of the time. And I really felt like a lot of the time we were just coming against blockages all the time. And actually, my access to the media is what helped move it forward. And if I didn't have that, I'm not sure we'd have got anywhere, because it frightened them. You know, what I was asking them to do really did frighten them, and I think that in the end they did the right thing, but it did take a lot of time. But, you know, as I say, I met some really good people, but I do sometimes feel that actually I'm not sure that a lot of people do understand. You know, people used to say to me, senior people say, oh, I understand how you might feel. And I find that quite offensive, because until you've had a child who has severe epilepsy that you're taking to hospital in an ambulance every week, you really do not know how I feel, and you don't understand it. And actually, I used to get quite upset by that, because I think that MPs just don't always understand what people are going through, and they struggle to maybe always understand that and be sympathetic.
And you've spoken as well about some of the isolation that you felt as a mum, not being able to leave the house. Normally, we just allow people one law that they would change, but I know there's a second one as well.
Yeah.
Because you really care about the state of social care, don't you?
I do, yeah. Before I had Alfie, it was not on my radar, really. Disability was not on my radar, and I'm sure many parents would agree with that. When he became unwell, I was thrown into this world of disability, and it was awful, because I didn't know anyone that was going through that. Drew and I spent 4 months in hospital with Alfie when he was 8 months old. We didn't really leave the hospital. When we left, we were literally left. We were left to go home on our own. We went through a horrendous traumatic experience. We didn't have a social worker. We had a play specialist and a physio for Alfie, but we had no mental health support at all. I have met so many single mothers in the journey that I've been on, because of lots of different reasons, but mainly because their relationship breaks down because their child is disabled and they can't cope with it. The father struggles to maybe always not be first, you know, to be second best most of the time, because the mother will always give everything to the disabled child. And there is no support. There is no mental health support for families with disabled children other than from charities. And when I was trying to find help, when it was really bad in 2017, I was trying to find help for our family. No charities covered Kenilworth, where I live. There was no social worker, said that we didn't need the help that I thought we needed. And it literally took me to a point where I was literally breaking down in 2017, and an occupational therapist said to me, we really need to help you. And I said, yes, you do, because I'm not in a good place. And that's when we were assigned a social worker. And unfortunately, in 2 years, we've had about 4 social workers because they go off on long-term sick and they never come back because it is so stressful and they need more support. So as Prime Minister, that's what I would do. I would ensure that there's much more help for parent carers. I feel that parent carers are not recognised. We talk about carers of the elderly and young carers, very important, very important. But what about parent carers, people that have babies that these babies never grow up. They need help for the rest of their lives. And a lot of the time we're not recognised. And that is a really important thing for me that I would definitely do something about. I'd probably appoint a minister for social care completely and ensure that social care is properly funded and that parents like me get the support that we need, because that's what stops us costing money in the long run. Their relationships won't break down, the mental health services won't be needed. You know, long-term view of how we can support parents is really important to me.
You've taken on this role now, campaigning for other parents too. Do you ever get any time for yourself at the moment?
Not really. No, I do actually. My partner took me out last night for dinner, which was lovely. Again, we wouldn't have done that before because I would have been too worried about leaving Alfie at night. It's always very difficult. And I still worry. I'll never not worry.
What's that? How does that feel to have that worry with you all day long? I mean, I suppose all parents worry, but your worry is on a different level.
It is hard. It is hard. I'm very lucky. I have amazing friends. I have a wonderful friend who's an acupuncturist who I go to, Emma, and she talks to me a lot about how I can release my sort of anxiety and things like that, and it does help. But I will always worry. I will never not worry about him. I will never, you know, my anxiety is much better, but it will always be there. It's what drives me because I do know what it's like to be that mother who's frightened to death of going to bed at night because you might not wake up in the morning with a child, and I know how that feels. And it's what drives me, but it will never leave me. And it is hard, and some days I wish it would, but it doesn't and it won't. And it's accepting the life you've been given. Because I still feel sad about Alfie having epilepsy. It's really hard. It's really hard, but I've worked really hard on trying to accept it. And that's the other thing that I've really got a lot of wonderful sort of, it's really encouraged, it sort of made my life better, is by helping the parents that I help. I speak to these mothers every day and they feel like me. When I went to Holland, I knew no one that had a child with a disability. I was very isolated, and now I've got lots of these women who say, you know, how you feel is normal. So it's really therapeutic for me as well as for them to have those people in my life, and I'm so grateful to them.
When you were going through some of those really tough times, what would you say to yourself now, looking back? If you could speak to yourself when you were in that situation, what would your advice be to your former self, do you think? Believe
in what you want to do. You know, I always, you know, it might sound crazy, but I always went with my gut feeling. I know what's right for my child, and I've proved that. You know, I was told by one doctor that I'd be reported to social services if I used cannabis with my child. I said, I don't want to use it in the UK, I want to go abroad. Still social services. I was told by one doctor it's too expensive, which again I think is madness, because actually if you can try and stop a child having seizures now, the likelihood of the family having a better life, the likelihood of mental health services needing is much less, the likelihood of that child needing long-term residential support when they're older is much less. So actually we need to look at long-term, the way we spend money in the NHS long-term, not just at this moment. But yeah, always follow your heart and never ever give up hope.
OK, well, that's your fight with the system. Let's get back to you being in charge of the system now and being Prime Minister. Who do you think would be in your fantasy cabinet? Because you've met some incredible people along the way. Who do you think you'd like to be around that cabinet table with you?
Peter Carroll, director of End Our Pain. Absolutely amazing man. Always got the best interests of families and helped me so much. I mean, I was never coached to do media. He just used to say to me, be yourself. And he's an amazing man, and I think the world of him, and he would be with me. Sir Mike Penning, definitely, yeah. He stood up in Parliament on the 18th of June last year and said if I didn't get a licence for Alfie, he'd take me to Holland and bring it back with me, and I believe he would have done that. And he's a passionate, amazing man. Tonya Antonazi, again, massive supporter of our campaign, and a lovely Labour MP, a lovely woman. I don't know who else really. I can't think of anyone.
That's quite a good start. That's quite a good start.
That's a good start, yeah.
Which world leader do you think you would call first?
It'd have to be either the Dutch or the Canadian Prime Minister.
Because of their attitude
towards medical cannabis. I think they're both very forward-thinking countries. And we've seen with the legislation that they've put in within their countries where patients are accessing medical cannabis and doing really well. And I think that, you know, I really respect their politics, absolutely.
Which party do you think you'd belong to if you were Prime Minister? Do you have a sense of your own politics?
I do. Yeah, my dad's very political, has been all his life. At the moment, I'm not so sure because I think everyone's lost their way a bit because of Brexit. So I think it's all a bit difficult. I don't know. I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? But yeah, I have grown up in a very political house. I'll just say that.
I know music's important to you as well.
Yeah.
Which song do you think you'd dance to on stage at party conference if you had to do a Theresa May and come out dancing?
I hope I dance better. I remember listening to Jeremy Vine when that was on Radio 2, and I remember a woman saying that you never move your feet when you dance if you want to look good, and I'll remember that. Greatest Showman, This Is Me.
Okay.
That is one of my favourite songs because, and I know it's about people that have, you know, physical disimpairment, but I have spent a lot of my life worrying about who I am and who I was and being quite an insecure person. And when you put yourself out there like I have, I do get criticism about who I am sometimes. And I listen to that song and I remember that everything I'm doing is for the good of people, and that's absolutely where I'm coming from. And if you listen to the words, it's about, you know, if you feel bad about yourself, forget that. This is me, this is what I want to do, and this is who I want to be. And it really resonates with me. And that's the song I would definitely dance to.
It's fascinating because people will look at you and see such a strong person, such a strong campaigner, and yet inside you don't necessarily feel strong. No,
I've been through and my family and my partner Drew and my daughter have been through a very, very difficult time. I was, believe it or not, a very shy teenager, very self-critical. I'm fighting for my son and his life, someone that I love more than anything in the world, and my partner Drew and my nanny. I love them all so much. They are me, they are my life. And if I had to fight for me, I wouldn't do that. But because it's my child, it's different. I was like a lioness, and I still am. And now I feel like I've taken that fight on for the other families that have no voice, that are families that are nursing their children every day through hundreds of seizures. They can't stand up and do what I do. I am their voice, and that's why I do what I do, and that's why I feel so passionate about it. And it's been a real self-discovery journey for me to find out how strong I can be.
Do you think you'd ever want to be Prime Minister then? Begs the question.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a very, very hard job. I think you have to have such a thick skin and really, really not care about what people think of you. And I'm not sure I'm quite there yet.
You're not on the Theresa May level of resilience just yet?
No, I would like to be one day, but not yet, maybe. But that's my journey. That's what I feel I'm going on, this life's journey of learning who I am, who I want to be, and feeling that actually I'm enough. You know, I've spent a lot of time thinking maybe I wasn't enough, feeling the guilt about my son being ill, all of those things, which I'm sure many other parents will recognise with children with disability. And I'm getting to the point where now I think I'm enough, which is a really good thing for me and nice for my family too, I think, probably. But no, I don't think I'd want to be Prime Minister at this point, but maybe one day. I said to you before, I was approached about becoming an MP, and again, this isn't something that I would want to do at the moment. My children are very small, and I don't think it works with very small children, but maybe one day. Watch this space.
Do you think it's possible for a parent in your situation to go into politics? Because there's a lot of talk about the diversity of Parliament, the fact there aren't necessarily that many people from regular backgrounds, not enough women, certainly not enough women with children.
No.
Probably virtually no women with a disabled child or a child with a very difficult condition.
No, I think...
Do you think it's possible for a woman in your situation to run for
I think it would
Parliament.
be very difficult, but I think it's really important that we do make that happen. I know recently there was a Labour MP that actually breastfed her daughter in the Houses of Parliament, which is fantastic. Why are we looking at that and thinking that's really modern and amazing? It should be what happens, and that's the thing. I think at the moment it's not easy. I don't think I could leave my children 4 days a week, my partner 4 days a week. I don't think it's made as easy as it should be. I think there's a lot of career politicians, which is, family career politicians, which is worrying, actually. I think it should be more diverse. The fact that it's on the agenda that it should be more diverse is great. I think there's a lot more work to be done.
OK, all right. Hannah Deacon, thanks so much for being our acting Prime Minister today.
Thank you.
You've been a fantastic campaigner. I'm sure there are many people who'd quite like you to be Prime Minister. But as you say, not quite yet, maybe.
Not quite yet. Thank you very much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks
a lot.